We're just going to get right into questions, if that's all right. And we will start off with Garen Emig, who will be followed by Ryan Aber. Garen?
Okay, Lincoln, thanks. Good to see you again. With regard to the last week in particular and all of the unrest over Black Lives Matter, your players have done some things actively, Chance Sylvie and Justin Broyles among them. When you have them in front of you and they request that you act with them, whether it's coming out to take a knee during the anthem before a game or marching in some kind of demonstration, will you be willing to do so?
Yeah, I definitely stand with my players. I mean, I think the statement that I put out on Twitter, and it's not just because they're my players. It's a fundamental belief that like I said, I was very fortunate. Was raised in a household that taught me that no one is better than anybody else, not because of the color of their skin. And been lucky enough to be in locker rooms and sport teams all my life, and it's so I'm fortunate to have grown up believing that, and been raised in a household where that was emphasized. And so honestly, if the players ask me to do something, that's great, but it's something that I would do regardless if I was a football coach or not. It's just a true fundamental belief that I have. And so no, certainly I stand with my players. I stand with an opportunity to help make this world a better place, however big or small that opportunity is. And so I don't think anything would be off the table, certainly as far as a protest or as far as a call for equality and for the world to get better, which it needs to right now. So as long as it's done tastefully, it's well thought out, it's done peacefully, there's certainly nothing off the table in that realm for me personally.
Thanks.
Okay, Ryan Aber, you're up, and will be followed by Jesse Washington.
Yeah, Lincoln, a couple of your players before you released the statement were critical of some silence on Twitter. How do you react to that? And also, how did what happened in 2015 shape how you've handled this situation, the SAE thing?
Yeah, no, definitely. No, my players know. They know who I am. They know what I stand for, and so, I'm very confident and secure in that. They know my beliefs on that. We've had opportunities to discuss that as a team several times, and so certainly, and it hasn't always been because of an issue. We always try to kind of keep those lines of communication open. It's something that we talk about actively in our program, that nobody, whether you're a coach, whether you're a player, whether you're a starter, whether you're a walk-on, regardless, whether you're black, whether you're white, I mean, whether your religion is this or that none of that matters to us in our facility and on our football team and in our program, and never has. So I think our guys know where I stand. One of my biggest reasons for doing it was, again, it's something I personally believe in. I know we've got some new players that either just got here and obviously weren't able to be here with us long, or new players that are coming in. And I thought at that point it was important that that it was important for those people to know, those people that haven't maybe gotten to know me completely yet, or haven't been in our locker room or program yet, to know exactly where we stood. And what was the second part of that? Oh, the 2015 incident. Yeah. I think you grow from it. As a coach, as a leader, you certainly, there's no manuals for this. This is a whole lot different than calling a play or designing a workout or a practice or a schedule. This is way different. So yeah, I certainly, I've always been very impressed with how Coach Stoops and that entire group handled that incident in 2015. So certainly something that I've learned from, and I think most importantly, I've learned the importance of communication and and making sure that everybody on our program's on the same page, and that everybody in our program has an opportunity to speak their mind and to make their beliefs heard, and to that there's no resistance there.
Appreciate it, Lincoln.
Okay, we'll move to Jesse Washington of the Undefeated, who will be followed by John Hoover.
Hey, Coach. Thanks for your time today. How did you make the decision to specifically post the hashtag Black Lives Matter? And with the context being that phrase bothers a lot of people in your state and perhaps even your university.
Because it's a personal belief of mine, and you've seen it said a lot of places. It's all lives do matter, but the incidents here of the of all the different things that have gone on between law enforcement and specifically Black males has highlighted that, and it's highlighted that people have said it very well, and maybe better than I can say it, that all lives can't matter until the Black lives do too, and on an equal playing field. And that's something I totally agree with. Like I said, I was raised in a household that none of that matters, and none of that should ever determine a person's opportunities, a person's ability to feel safe in a community. All of that should be based on how hard you work. And how often, when you have those choices in life, do you make the right one versus the wrong one? And I think if you're a person that does that and makes the right choices and works your tail off, then you ought to have the same opportunities that anybody else should. And I know that's not a reality for some people. And so, that was my inner belief. Again, that's not something that's done because I coach a football team that has a lot of young Black males on it, or has staff that has Black males on it, or what, that has nothing to do with it. It's having been on football teams, been in those locker rooms, I've seen how awesome it can be when everybody takes an approach of, we're all on the same playing field, we're all equal, and how beautiful that is. And so I think being in those situations for the majority of my life has only made me appreciate more like how awesome and how much better life is when we don't worry about color of skin or any other factors, and we treat people the right way, and people have opportunities based on, like I said, the work you do and the decisions you make.
Okay, we'll go to John Hoover, followed by Heather Dinich. John?
Hey, good morning, Lincoln, or good afternoon, I guess. Thanks for, what is it, just afternoon? Yeah, almost noon, sorry. Wanted to ask you about at Oklahoma State today. First of all, thanks for your time. Oklahoma State announced that they had 3 players who tested positive for COVID-19. From your perspective as the head football coach, are you able to describe what you know about the process at Oklahoma, how those tests are going to be administered, what the quarantine procedures will be, anything that you can tell us about that as it's developing today?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the advantages that we talked about for us is, we get to see how this goes. We made the decision that we were going to bring our players back in the neighborhood of July 1st several weeks ago. This was made well before the Big 12 made a decision. It was made well before any other league made a decision. It was made well before the NCAA came out and said what you could or couldn't do. We knew what we were going to do. And part of and it's been amazing, even in I don't know, it's probably been close to a month ago that we made that decision. We've already learned so much more about it, and some of the testing procedures and quarantine procedures for our players and all that have changed just in that time. And so I can imagine how much more we're going to learn in the next several weeks. And so, we're still constantly gathering information, but I would say, we're going to have an initial quarantine of our players before they ever step foot on campus, all players, all staff members. We are going to have extensive testing after that quarantine is completed. And then at that point, any players staff members, anything that tests positive, there we've got a kind of a quarantine plan in place for both a spot on campus and then obviously staff members at their homes. And and then there'll be additional testing ongoing. So I don't know what I want to get too specific because again, it's changing so quickly and we're learning more and more each day. And so, I'm happy. I'm not comparing this to what anybody else is doing. I mean, everybody's got to make their bed and lie in it. For us, we're happy that we're learning more about it. And I feel like those other 22 hours of the day that our players are in our facilities, I think we're going to be able to really provide as safe of an atmosphere environment that we possibly can at that time.
Thank you.
Okay, Heather Dinich, you're up, and then Barry Trammell will be next.
Can you hear me, Lincoln?
I got you.
Okay, thanks. To follow up on John's question a little bit, knowing that football hasn't even started and you guys haven't even played a game yet, what are the remaining concerns that you do have as we see players testing positive even before they step on the field? And you got to play at where the state fair is. I mean, have you thought about that rivalry game and the conditions surrounding that? As we sit here, I know it's far away, but just in terms of some concerns that you have looking forward as we see what is unfolding out.
Yeah, I would say as far as the Texas game, the state fair is concerned, I don't know that will have a huge impact on the football team and our players. I mean, our deal's kind of the same no matter what. I mean, we're going to drive into somewhere, we're going to go to the locker room, and then we're going to go out in the field and play. And so I don't know that would have any more concerns there than any of our other games, at least off the top of my head. Certainly be interesting how that all plays out with, just like you said, especially with the fans, people go to the fair, with the number of people, just kind of how that'll play out. It'll certainly be interesting, but I think it's too far ahead to say right now. Concerns, yeah, I mean, there definitely is. I mean, I think there's, the concern, just like if you have all your guys on campus right now, and one guy gets it, what do you do with the rest of your players that they've been around, and how do you control that? And then there's still, I think no matter what, there's going to be there's concerns for every human life in it, but there's obviously special concerns for your staff members that are a little bit older or more in that age range that has showed to be a little bit more susceptible. There's definitely, and then I think just policies and procedures of how do we separate these guys? Again, how do you handle when one player gets it? I think everybody in the world knows you're going to quarantine that player, but what do you do with all the other people that they've inevitably been around? And, those are all things that, we're going to have to work through. And again, the best thing that we can possibly do is try to limit, obviously, as many guys as we can and then hopefully learn as much about this as we can. But there is an element of, we're kind of stepping into uncharted waters a little bit. I mean, there's certainly a little bit of that feeling, and I think that's something that we're all just going to have to work through.
Thank you.
Okay, Barry, you're up, and then Tyler Palmatier.
Yeah, Lincoln, through all the coronavirus discussions and dialogue, and also now in recent days with the protests and things that are going on, how much in contact have you been with Joe Harris and the decisions you've made in concert with him? And what's your relationship been like with Joe through all this?
Yeah, we've definitely been in contact. I know he's certainly probably had more contact with Joe Castiglione, but we've had some direct contact, both about the virus, our stance on, when to bring our players back, our stance on testing, and when to bring the staff back, starting to talk about, what a season looks like and setting kind of our priorities as we work through all these different scenarios that could play out. And so communication with Joe has been great. And, it's been awesome to see that, even though, this group of the three of us have not all of us worked together for a long time yet, we were very much in sync on really every step of how we wanted to handle this virus. And so that was exciting to see that both Joe's and myself were already on the same page and similar feelings about this. So was excited about some of that just as you know, a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on this. So I thought that was a great thing. And that was a big part of the reason we were able to make up our minds and be, I think, very decisive about how we were going to handle this initial part of getting our players back on campus. So now Joe and I have a great relationship. I got to know him when he's the dean of the law school. He's been a good friend of Coach Stoops's for years, and that was kind of my first introduction to him. And so we've gotten a chance to get to know each other certainly before. We knew each other well before I was the head coach or he was an interim, or now full-time, I guess, however you describe it, just the president. So it was great to have a little bit of a good personal relationship before then, because obviously that's a key relationship if this thing's going to work the way we believe it can.
Hey, Tyler Palmatier, followed by Dennis Dodd.
Hey, Lincoln. I don't want to generalize this because it's not true in all cases. There are a lot of people who are supporting your athletes and other athletes' voices in this race conversation, but many are also not. What message would you have for OU fans who support athletes on the field but have been dismissive of their voices on human rights issues off the field?
Oh, yeah, it's a tricky question just because, one, I think people's emotions are so high about this right now, regardless of what side of the argument that you're on, that, there's a little bit of an element right now to, it's like throwing a match on gasoline right now. And but I do, well, I don't know that I would have a message for them. I mean, I understand that we live in a country where you're able to believe, what you want to believe, and you're able to express that. And so certainly, respect everybody's opinions, understand that, it's probably a fantasy to think that we would all think or believe one way ever. But I think, the opportunity that if we do have differing opinions, to at least be able to respect the other person's opinions. If we do protest or question or anything like that we do it tastefully and peacefully, and then we try to find a place that we can all coexist, and a place that we can all all have the same opportunities. And so that would be my hope, that we could get there. And I would hope that regardless of what side of the argument that somebody's on, that we could at least get to that place of mutual respect.
Dennis Dodd, you're up. Bob Prisbilla next.
Thanks, Lincoln. Leaving Oklahoma out of it, what do you think the temptation is for maybe some of your peers during these voluntary workouts to make them something, more than that, start game planning or something like that?
Oh, voluntary, sadly, in our college game, voluntary has always been a very loose term, and it's come down. I mean, the reality of the matter is there's different institutions and there's different conferences that, allow you to do a different amount, or some just look the other way. And so that's, it's unfortunate that that's what it's come to right now. But we have other parts of our year where that's always been an issue, and it's well known across coaches, players across the country, that's a rule that's applied very differently at different places in different parts of the country. So, something we live with. I'm sure the temptation will be high. Just like, I think the temptation to get players back on campus right away was high. And I think it just all comes down to your priorities, and what you believe is best. And so, that's probably why I'm more proud of our university, our leadership. And again, whether you brought them back the first day of June, whether you bring them back like we do early in July, you could sit there and debate that. The thing I'm proud of is we didn't wait for somebody else to do it. We didn't wait for somebody to tell us what we could do. We just did simply what we believed was best. And we didn't wait till one of our competitors did it. And when our competitor said they're bringing them back early, we didn't flinch. And so I think that's a sign of strong leadership in our university. And we set our priorities and what we felt like was best, and we've stuck with it.
Bob Prisbillo, and then Nathan Thompson.
Yeah, Lincoln, last time we spoke with you, we talked about the physical health of certain players. I want to talk about the mental health. How big of an issue has that been when you have the pandemic, you combine that with Black Lives Matter? I mean, even during usual times, that would be tough to handle. But how difficult of a situation has it been mentally during the last 2-3 months?
Oh, extremely difficult. I mean, you've got players that are totally out of their comfort zones right now, having been gone so long, missing all the things that they're used to doing and want to do. And then with obviously the two major different things going on in our country right now and in the world, I mean, it's a huge deal, and it's something that we've I don't want to get too specific with it, but it's something that we're using. We only get so much time with our players a week right now. It's regulated, but we're taking some of that time that we could be doing some football related activities, and we're directing it more towards that area, just because it's important to us. One, we think it's like you said, a big factor, and two, again, our health and well-being of our players, we never put anything in front of that. And so I think we've taken some positive steps, but certainly as these guys get back on campus, it's something we're going to really be watching out for. Thankful we've got, a team of coaches that's that I think gets that and understands it, and are a good support system for our guys. And then having our pros department, having a school, we were the first athletic program in the country to have a full mental health department. You're thankful that you have the resources that we do, because I think it'll be all hands on deck.
Okay, we'll go to Nathan Thompson and then Jenny Carlson.
All right, thank you, Coach. With those two huge events going on right now, with the coronavirus pandemic, and also, of course, with the Black Lives Matter, is this the toughest time that you've ever had as a coach, going through two things like this at once? And also, as a leader of young men, how do you advise these players who many will feel compelled that they want to protest and it's important to them, but also it's important with the social conditioning of this pandemic? How do you advise them to rationalize those two things?
First question, is it the toughest? It's different. There's always challenges with this job. That's one thing I've found. It's like, I don't know. It's like playing golf. Like the second you think you got it figured out, then you're probably setting yourself up for a disappointment, man. There's just always a challenge with this. And so I don't know yet. I mean, it's definitely different than a lot of things we've ever encountered. We've had some other tough moments, but obviously, all this going on kind of at once has certainly been a unique challenge. And I think as a leader for our guys, I think it's a few things. I think it's, you always look first of how do you act, and what example are you setting? Because as a coach, they're always watching that, how you act, the words you say, what you mean. And so trying to set a good positive example first by my actions. And then I think advice, I think the biggest messages to our players, has been, number one, for them to know that they're supported here. Number two is, we don't believe in holding our guys back from having the ability to speak their mind, to be involved in a protest or anything else that they believe in, as long as it is done peacefully, it's done tastefully, it's well thought out, with good intentions. And I would say up to this point, I've been extremely proud of how our players have responded. I think it's been mature. I think it's been very well thought out, been very unified. One of my prouder moments as a coach to see, because this is something with, again, you got players, all different races, all different backgrounds from all over the country, guys that have been brought up in all kinds of different households, you name it. I mean, we're kind of the melting pot. And to see how our guys have responded up to this point, I've been extremely, extremely proud.
Okay, Jenny Carlson, and then Carrie Murdoch. Jenny, are you on? We'll go to Carrie.
Okay, here we go. Hey, Lincoln, how you doing? Thanks again for doing this. Hey, some clarification on what you were talking about with your quarantine. Like, let me ask you, say you have, guys coming in from supposed hotspots, whether it be Florida or wherever, like that July 1st, are you saying that you would bring people in before July 1st and have them kind of be quarantined so they're ready to go then? Or is that a quarantine happens like from July 1st on?
The quarantine for us will happen starting in mid-June. I don't know. I don't want to get too much in the weeds with this, but a general thought is there, depending on where a player is at, where they're coming from, there's a plan in place, kind of a set of guidelines that we go through as far as where they can quarantine. A lot of our players will be able to quarantine if they're at their homes. The majority of our players will be able to quarantine there. And then we've got some safe ways of being able to bring them back and preserve the integrity of that quarantine through any travel back here. So it's a pretty intensive process. And again, but I think it's necessary. And obviously the goal is be with that quarantine to get every single player and staff member here on campus and start off with everybody not having the virus. And then obviously the next step is doing your best to keep it that way.
And just real quick, any thoughts on just the dead period being extended, through July? I mean, that seems like that's going to make it really tough for you guys to be coaching, be it on the road, evaluating that kind of thing when you finally have that opportunity.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. And even if we weren't coaching, I mean, shoot, we're having a hard time getting our players back right now. I don't know. I mean, do you quarantine recruits? Do you give recruits coronavirus tests? I mean, do you potentially infect the whole team or staff and lose a game or lose season or whatever to bring a recruit to campus? It seems kind of far-fetched. And so, I think in my opinion, I think we're a ways away from having any recruiter family on campus. Again, it's not what you want it to be. Of course, everybody wants them to get to campus, but we're all having to live in that reality right now, both the schools, the parents, the players, the recruits, everybody. So it seems far-fetched to be able to quarantine or test the families right now. And for all that you could potentially be risking. I mean, even if you don't put them around your players, what if you bring somebody in and they infect your whole staff, and then the week of the game, your entire staff has coronavirus? I mean, how I know it's important for them to visit, believe me, I do, but how stupid would we look if we did that? I mean, so we got a ways to go, in my opinion, before we're even close to having recruits and families on campus. It's disappointing, but it is what it is right now.
I appreciate that, Lincoln.
Mike, you muted.
I'm sorry, I was muted. We're about to run out of time here. We've got time for one more. I'm going to go back to Jenny Carlson. Jenny.
I'm here. Sorry about that. Hey, Lincoln. I know this is obviously probably well off the radar with everything going on, but you're coming up on your 3-year anniversary as head coach at Oklahoma. Obviously, you've talked in the past about where you were when you took over the job in terms of being ready and that sort of thing. I'm curious if you can think back on these last 3 years, how you feel like you've most grown over that time. And then as a follow-up to that, as I think about the success of the program, it's clearly a continuation of what had happened before, but the way that you guys go about your business, I do see changes. I don't think this is, just Bob Stoops 2.0 program. So how you put your own fingerprints on things, can you kind of reflect on both of those things?
Yeah. No, as far as kind of what we put our fingerprints on, all that, I mean, first I would say if somebody said it was Bob Stoops 2.0, I would take that as the ultimate compliment. There's certainly a lot of parts of our program that you're exactly right, that carried over in some form or fashion from the way that Bob ran this program for a long time. So there was obviously a whole lot that was right with it, and that's, he's certainly of any individual person if not the most, he's right there at number 2 as far as it's been the most influential on me, along with Donnie Duncan. And so, yeah, no, it's a lot of the things that we do certainly come from Bob. Yeah, and there's been a few things that have changed. I think maybe some of it's, myself, the staff's personality. Some of it is just the times and the rules and what you got to do has changed, and you've had to adapt. And so I do think some of it's that. Certainly on the recruiting, social media, kind of that entire world, I think there would have been, you would have felt some of those changes, whether, I was the head coach or whether Bob was still the head coach. And then, yeah, how I've most grown. Yeah, I think in the beginning for me, it was, mine was so different, especially, with the staff piece, that so much of the staff was in place. And I really think that the first year, the only people I had to hire, I think, were Ruffin and then I think Annie. And I think, the majority of our staff was still in place. And so I think as we've had some staff changes through the years, you get a chance to kind of start to put together from a whole vision of what you really believe, which is kind of a little bit more like the, traditional head coaching jobs are. Mine was obviously different. And so I think, just kind of getting more of an overall direction and having, we've had some key changes that have been really important for our program, and having a choice there, I think has probably been some of the biggest changes through the years. And then I would say, I don't know, me personally, not as much surprises me anymore. And I've tried to become a better communicator with our guys. I've tried to be, I think each year you got to kind of continue to try to challenge yourself to then find ways to get better. And so, I still feel very challenged each and every day, still feel challenged every single year. I know that. This year obviously has been no different, no shortage of that right now. But yeah, I mean, it's feel like I've grown in a lot of areas, but still, like I've said many times, still feel like I got a ways to go.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm sorry we couldn't quite get to everybody, but thank you, Coach. Thank you, everybody else, for your time. We'll talk again soon. Everybody, please be well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.